fall, we'll talk about Revolutionary heroes in our counties. Illinois, it's Hamilton and Wayne. In Indiana, it's Knox, Gibson, Vanderburgh, and Posey. And then down Kentucky, it's Henderson, Hancock, Hopkins, Muhlenberg, Butler, Grayson, Ted, Trigg, and Christian. These are some of the names. Revolutionary heroes: Colonel John Gibson, Major General Henry Knox, Major John Martin, General Thomas Posey, Captain Henry Vanderburgh, General Richard Butler, Colonel William Christian, Colonel William Grayson, John Hancock, Captain Richard Henderson, Major General Samuel Hopkins, Major General Reverend Peter Muhlenberg, Colonel John Todd, Officer Stephen Trigg, General Alexander Hamilton, Colonel John Hardin, Major General Anthony Wayne.
It's really interesting that we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War. The whole events and time period that occurred, that later we're going to talk about possibly getting involved in some kind of a program or looking at doing something in that kind of a program, even at the local level. At least recognize that the 250th anniversary has come to us. So without further delay, I will introduce Mr. Bob Hall.
Thank you.
I got to get to my chair.
I want to thank all of you for coming today. It makes it a lot more fun when there's a good, lively audience, and it's much more enjoyable for me. Thank you. It makes it quite rewarding. Well, there's a catchphrase that stands up, an old soldier's folk song that says, "Old soldiers never die, they just fade away." Well, the Revolutionary War heroes did not fade away. Their names live on in the names of our counties. I looked at the counties in Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois. There are actually 314 counties, so we won't be going through all of those. I knew I had to trim this and make it manageable. So I looked at the counties that were within maybe 75 miles of Evansville, those that we could drive to within an hour and a half or so. In making this limit, we do leave out a few that are just over the border of being 75 miles away or so. I think of Greene County in Indiana. The county seat there is Bloomfield. That's named for General Nathaniel Greene. Then there's Logan County in Kentucky. The seat there is Russellville, and that was named for General Benjamin Logan. And then also in Illinois, we have Jefferson County, that is Mount Vernon, Illinois, named, of course, for President Thomas Jefferson. Have you ever wanted to present your own program to the SAR? Well, this program might help you, because you might find a Revolutionary War hero that I mentioned today, and you might be quite interested. It might spur your curiosity, and you might put together your own program. In fact, as I looked over these Revolutionary War heroes, I saw a few that would make good programs. They're in there. So, revolutionary people, put on your boots and let's go marching through Indiana. Starting in Indiana, and let's go up to Gibson County. The seat of Gibson County is Princeton, Indiana. Gibson County was named for Colonel John Gibson. He was in the Revolutionary War. He also was in the French and Indian War, Dunmore's War, Tecumseh's War, and the War of 1812. Gibson was a merchant. He was a delegate to the Pennsylvania Constitutional Convention, and he was a frontier leader. He had good relations with many of the Indians in the region. He was the secretary of the Indiana Territory, and he is responsible for the organization of the territorial government. Colonel Gibson twice served as acting governor of Indiana Territory. Next, we march on to Knox County, just north of Gibson County. The seat of Knox County is Vincennes. Knox County is named for Major General Henry Knox. In the Revolutionary War, he was the chief artillery officer in the Continental Army. He was in the battles of Bunker Hill, Long Island, Trenton, Brandywine, Germantown, Monmouth, and finally, Yorktown. Knox served as the first Secretary of War for our nation, and he oversaw military action in the Northwest Indian Territory. Also, Knoxville, Tennessee is named for Major General Henry Knox. Next, we move over to Martin County. Martin County is in Indiana, is named for Major John T. Martin. The seat of Martin County is Shoals. In the Revolutionary War, Martin served under General Benjamin Logan. Major Martin served with Daniel Boone in Kentucky. Our next trip takes us to Posey County, Indiana. The seat there is Mount Vernon, Indiana. Posey County is named for General Thomas Posey. He was an officer in the Revolutionary War, and he was a general in peacetime. Also, he was in the Northwest Indian War. He was a lieutenant governor of Kentucky, and he was a governor of Indiana Territory. Posey was a U.S. Senator from Louisiana, and he's buried at Shawneetown, Illinois. And this chapter went to Shawneetown, Illinois, and marked the grave of General Thomas Posey. Finally, in Indiana, we march and end up right here, Vanderburgh County. The seat is Evansville. Vanderburgh County is named for Captain Judge Henry Vanderburgh. In the Revolutionary War, Vanderburgh was a lieutenant in the 5th New York Regiment. He was born in Troy, New York. He was a judge in the Indiana Territory. He was an educator. He also was a government and civic leader. He was a member of the Society of Cincinnati. Captain Vanderburgh was buried near Vincennes. And one of the 2 DAR chapters here in Evansville is named for Captain Vanderburgh, the Henry Vanderburgh chapter of the DAR. Revolutionary people, saddle up and we will ride through Kentucky. Our first stop in Kentucky is in Butler County. The seat of Butler County is Morgantown. Now, not Morgan Field, but Morgantown. Butler County is named for General Richard Butler. In the Revolutionary War, Butler was in the battles of Saratoga, Monmouth, and St. Clair's defeat. He was a judge in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he was a member of the Society of Cincinnati. Butler was later killed fighting Indians in St. Clair's defeat. General Butler died at Fort Recovery, Ohio. From here, we ride on over to Christian County. In Christian County, the seat is Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Christian County is named for Colonel William Christian. In the Revolutionary War, Christian was in the Anglo-Cherokee War and Dunmore's War. He was a famous Indian fighter. He served in the House of Burgesses in Virginia. He was the founder of Fort William. We now call that Louisville, Kentucky. He helped negotiate the Treaty of Long Island, making peace between the Over Mountain men and a majority of the Cherokee tribes. Also, Christian County, Missouri, which is in southwestern Missouri between Springfield and Branson, Missouri, that was named for Colonel Christian. And there's a town in Virginia called Christiansburg, also named for Colonel Christian. From there, we ride on up to Grayson County. Grayson County. In Grayson County, the seat is Litchfield, Kentucky. Colonel William Grayson got his name on that county. In the Revolutionary War, he was in the Philadelphia campaign. Grayson was a lawyer. He was a U.S. Senator from Virginia, and he was in the Anti-Federalist political party. Colonel Grayson was the first member in the U.S. Congress to die while in office. Next, we ride on up to Hancock County. Hancock County. The seat of Hancock County is Hallsville. John Hancock is the person who caused Hancock County to get its name. John Hancock was a wealthy merchant, and he was a statesman. He was the president of the Second Continental Congress, and he served for more than 2 years in the Continental Congress. John Hancock was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He helped ensure Massachusetts adopted the U.S. Constitution. Hancock was the first and third governor of Massachusetts. John Hancock is famed for his large, beautiful penmanship and how he signed the Declaration of Independence in his large, beautiful handwriting. And today, if we say, put your John Hancock here, we mean that as a synonym for get your signature on there, the same way that John Hancock boldly put his signature on the Declaration of Independence. From Hancock County, we ride over to Henderson County. The seat is Henderson. It's named for Captain Richard Henderson. In the Revolutionary War, Richard Henderson was in the North Carolina militia. He was a judge in North Carolina. He was a merchant. He was a legislator in North Carolina. Henderson helped to decide the boundary between the states of Virginia and North Carolina. Captain Henderson tried to make Kentucky County, Virginia, into its own colony, and he was going to call it Transylvania, but that plan did not come off. So that is Captain Richard Henderson. Next, we ride on over to Hopkins County, Kentucky. The seat of Hopkins County is Madisonville. Hopkins County is named for Major General Samuel Hopkins. In the Revolutionary War, he served. He also was in the War of 1812. Hopkins was a lawyer. He was commander-in-chief of the western frontier of Indiana and Illinois territories. He was a U.S. representative from Kentucky. He was a member of the Society of Cincinnati, and he died at Henderson, Kentucky. He's buried in Spring Garden Cemetery. And in fact, a few years ago, our chapter marked the gravesite of General Hopkins. And also, a city is named for General Hopkins, and it's Hopkinsville, which is not in Hopkins County. Next is Muhlenberg. The seat of Muhlenberg County is Greenville in Kentucky. It's named for Major General Peter Muhlenberg. In the Revolutionary War, Peter Muhlenberg was in the battles of Brandywine, Germantown, Monmouth, and Yorktown. Peter Muhlenberg was a Lutheran pastor, and he also was an Anglican pastor. Peter Muhlenberg was famous for being in the pulpit, preaching one day, taking off his robe and revealing a militia uniform underneath, and for being very efficient at recruiting soldiers for the Revolutionary War cause and for leading those men into battle. Muhlenberg became the vice president of Virginia. He was a U.S. representative from of Pennsylvania, and I should have said Vice President of Pennsylvania. He was a U.S. representative from Pennsylvania, and there's a statue of Major General Peter Muhlenberg that is in the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Next, we move to Todd County. The seat of Todd County is Elkton. It's named for Colonel John Todd. In the Revolutionary War, he was in the Battle of Point Pleasant. He also was in an expedition to capture Vincennes and Kaskaskia with George Rogers Clark. Todd served as a legislator in Virginia, and he became the commandant of the entire territory north and west of the Ohio River. He was in charge of the Fayette County militia with Daniel Boone as lieutenant colonel, but Colonel Todd was killed in the disastrous Battle of Blue Licks in Robertson County, Kentucky. Our final stop in Kentucky takes us to Trigg County. In Trigg County, the seat is Cadiz. Trigg County is named for Officer Stephen Trigg. In the Revolutionary War, he was the leader of the Lincoln County, Kentucky militia. He signed the Fincastle resolutions, and this document was a precursor to the Declaration of Independence. Trigg was a member of the Virginia legislature from Kentucky County. He commanded half of the militia in the Battle of Blue Licks, with Daniel Boone in charge of the other half. Trigg was killed in the Battle of Blue Licks in central Kentucky. Okay, revolutionary people, get in your wagon and ride over to Illinois. And in Illinois, our first stop will be in Hamilton County. The seat of Hamilton County is McLeansboro. Hamilton County is named for General Alexander Hamilton. In the Revolutionary War, Hamilton was in the battles of Trenton, Brandywine, Germantown, Monmouth, and Yorktown. He was aide-de-camp of General George Washington. Alexander Hamilton was born in the British West Indies. He came to America to study. After he became Secretary of the Treasury, he backed a strong national government. He also wrote many of the Federalist Papers. He wrote 51 out of the 83 Federalist Papers. First Secretary of the Treasury, he believed in a strong national central government, and so he established a national bank. Alexander Hamilton favored the Assumption Bill, and the Assumption Bill was important in our country because it allowed the nation to assume the debts that the states had run up in the Revolutionary War and the period shortly after the Revolutionary War. And in favor, because of Alexander Hamilton was able to gain support for his Assumption Bill from the southern colonies, he also favored a plan and a compromise to move the national capital a little more southward from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., and then the Assumption Bill was passed. Alexander Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, established the Customs Office and a naval force to protect the U.S. shores. And that force became the U.S. Coast Guard. Hamilton wrote the first draft of President George Washington's farewell address, the famous speech that he gave. Unfortunately, Alexander Hamilton was killed in 1804 in a duel with Vice President Aaron Burr, Aaron Burr was a political opponent of Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton lives on today also, maybe right in your wallet, in one of these, the $10 bill. And there it is, Alexander Hamilton. General Hamilton. Next, we move on over to Hardin County. The seat is Elizabethtown. Now, by coincidence, there also is a Hardin County in Kentucky that is named also for Colonel John Hardin. And it just so happens that the county seat in Kentucky also is Elizabethtown. So if someone ever asks you the county seat of Hardin County, you don't even have to ask the state, it's going to be Elizabethtown. In the Revolutionary War, Colonel John Hardin was in the First Battle of Saratoga, and he was in the Harmar campaign. He also was in Dunmore's War. John Hardin was known as the Indian Killer. He led a successful attack on the Piankashaw village near Vincennes, Indiana, and he led a militia expedition to attack a Shawnee Indian village near Terre Haute, Indiana. He was a rancher, farmer, hunter, and a noted marksman. He led a detachment of Kentucky County volunteers who were in the militia in the disastrous Battle of Heller's Corner. And that battle sometimes is known as Hardin's defeat. He also led a force of Kentucky mounted militia in the destruction of a large Kickapoo Indian village near the mouth of the Big Pine Creek in Indiana. Hardin was sent by President Washington to negotiate peace with the Shawnee Indians. And along the way, the Shawnee offered to escort Hardin to their village. However, the Shawnee killed Hardin and his servant while they were sleeping. Our final stop today will be in Wayne County, Illinois. The seat of Wayne County is Fairfield, Illinois. It's named for Major General Anthony Wayne. In the Revolutionary War, Anthony Wayne was in the Battle of Trois Rivières, also in the Philadelphia Campaign, at Brandywine, Paoli, Germantown, Monmouth, Stony Point, New York, Bulls Ferry, Green Springs, the invasion of Quebec, and finally, Yorktown. Because of General Wayne's military exploits and his fiery personality, he was promoted, and he also earned the nickname of Mad Anthony Wayne. After the Revolutionary War, Wayne settled on a rice plantation in Georgia. He served in the Georgia House of Representatives. Then he returned to the military to fight more Indians. He was in the Northwest Indian War, he was in the siege of Fort Recovery, and he was in the Battle of Fallen Timbers. He was a senior officer in the Ohio country, and he also led the Legion of the United States. Anthony Wayne died of complications of gout in 1796 while on active duty. There are many namesakes for General Wayne. There are 14 other counties in the United States named for General Wayne. Also a city. Fort Wayne, Indiana, was named for General Wayne. And even in the Batman comics, Bruce Wayne got his last name from Mad Anthony Wayne. Finally, there was a movie actor who was born with the name of Marion Morrison. Marion Morrison's first big film was in 1930, and he decided to take a stage name. He took the stage name of John Wayne, and this was in honor of Anthony Wayne. In 1939, John Wayne became a big star in the movie Stagecoach. He won an Oscar for playing Rooster Cogburn in the 1969 film True Grit. When I saw that John Wayne had taken his name from Mad Anthony Wayne, I wondered about another actress. And this is Carol Wayne. She was a comic actress, and she was known for playing dumb blondes in comedies and in skits on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Carol Wayne drowned at age 40. 1842 in Moncillo, Mexico. But apparently her last name that she was born with was Wayne. So this is one example in which Major General Anthony Wayne did not inspire a stage name or another namesake. Revolutionary people, good work. Now I have basically finished, and now your work might begin. Did you see some other counties on here that you kind of wondered about? We might be able to look at 2 or 3 of these. We can't take up too much time in here. But did you see a couple that, and maybe I can tell you some, you can look at some of the ones on the list and can tell you how it's got its name. Crittenden County. Crittenden County is named for U.S. Senator John Crittenden, not a Revolutionary War figure.
About Warwick.
Warwick County is named for Jacob Warwick, who was killed in the Battle of Tippecanoe. Union County is most unusual. Union County is not named for a person, for an individual. Union County is named for the united efforts of its citizens to form a county. Wow. Orange County is named for the House of Orange in Nassau. May I mention one that is a little unusual, and that's Davis County. And in fact, this is a double, because we have Davis County, Indiana, which is Washington, seats Washington, and Davis County, Kentucky, which is Owensboro. These are spelled D-A-V-I-E-S-S. They're named for Joseph Davis, but he usually spelled his name in the records as D-A-V-E-I-S-S. Okay, I think we're out of time.
Thank you, Bob. That was very informative and interesting. Towards the National Society
Initiation of 3 new members. SAR.
Will, you mean Lord again? John Young, a registrar, will pass out the